Hi viewers, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're watching and from wherever you're watching. My name is Umar Isa Dandago and this is Global Arena. This is a special edition of the show. As we have already started covering the heated American politics. This year's elections coming up in November are going to be a little bit different from the ones that we have seen before. And this is something that we're going to analyze with my guest today. She is no other but Gina London, our very own Gina London, an award-winning former CNN correspondent and anchor, and also a communications consultant based in Dublin, the Republic of Ireland. She has traveled to 50 countries working with executives and CEOs, teaching them and coaching them on how to become better communicators. And she has been teaching me on how to become a better communicator. Thank you very much once again, Gina London, for coming back to the show.
Oh, it's great to see you, Umar. And as you know, I'm a friend of yours and a friend of Nigeria, and it means a lot to me to be with you here today on this historic, unprecedented occasion, may I add.
Yeah, definitely. You call it an unprecedented occasion, referring to the withdrawal of Joe Biden from the candidacy, from the race. But a lot of people had seen it coming because of his age and because of the pressure, internal pressure from the members, some of the key members and donors of his party. Do you still believe that it was unprecedented?
Well, it was unprecedented in the sense that historically there's never been a presidential nominee who has received all of the primary votes and become the official candidate before the convention, yes, but who has withdrawn from the race on their own accord. You might remember in 1968, there was a Democratic candidate for president who had just clinched the California primary, Robert Kennedy, and it seemed as if he was going to be the presumptive nominee, interestingly, in the Chicago convention that was coming up that year. And then he was killed that very evening, or he was shot that very evening and then died of his wounds a couple of days later. But this is a presidential nominee just 3 weeks away from the convention, actually stepping down. Maybe he was pressured because there were members of his party saying that he should step down. There were donors that were withholding funds, and there were data from the polls that his own team had collected, had surveyed, that said, in their words, apparently, there was no more path to victory for him against Donald Trump. But still, it is unprecedented from the standpoint of, even if you can mark from that really disastrous debate that he had a month ago with Donald Trump, that it might have been inevitable, it still was unprecedented what he chose to do yesterday as we're recording this on Monday after the announcement on Sunday.
Yes, definitely. And I know you are a registered Democrat, if I can put it this way. I'm sorry if we can reveal it. If you don't want it, we can cut it out. But you've been voting for Democrats, right?
I have no problem saying that, yes, I'm a registered Democrat. I used to be independent when I was covering the White House for CNN, as was pretty much encouraged for everyone that covered the White House at those days. I did, full disclosure, work briefly for the Democratic Party before I worked in television news. And regardless of policy, I would like to say that just from the integrity of the human beings that were running, the record of Joe Biden as a human being versus the record of a convicted felon and a igniter of an insurrection in Donald Trump, and also a convicted sexual predator. I would
also a survivor
not vote for a Democrat. I would not vote for a Democrat who had that same legacy, such as Donald Trump.
Okay, and also to add upon what you have said, a survivor of an assassination attempt, aka Donald Trump.
Yes, but interestingly, I don't know how much that's going to swing voters, because even though it's only been 9 days since that assassination attempt happened, and as we're recording, there have been hearings from the Secret Service in front of members of Congress from both sides of the aisle that are genuinely calling into question the security measures that weren't put in place properly to protect the former president. When Donald Trump said before he was going to speak at the Republican National Convention that he was going to do a message of unity and that he was going to try to bring people together, he's already gone back to his regular playbook of making insults and calling people by names and drudging up old names about why Hannibal Lecter, the fictional character from the film, was a great person. So there's already the old Donald Trump that's back in play. So I don't know that you are going to continue to get outside of his base people that are going to be feeling sympathetic or wanting enough to change their vote or move into voting for him strictly on that. I don't know that that moves the dial.
Yes, of course. But one thing that I think we need to point out to the people, to the viewers, is that Donald Trump has a strong fan base, has a lot of people that are willing to vote for him if the elections were to take place. Now, before Joe Biden's withdrawal, there were some analysts indicating that if the elections could take place immediately after the June debate, then Donald Trump could beat Joe Biden, which means looking at the enormity of his supporters and the support that he has got from his fans, doesn't it pose a threat to the Democrats that Donald Trump's supporters could still make a significant change in the election move?
Well, this is exactly the reason why Joe Biden withdrew, is because the numbers weren't there based on the polling data that went in before the debate, and then continued to plague him after the 3 weeks for that debate. Biden tried to have 3 separate interviews. There were 2 different networks in the United States that he tried to speak on again to try to get back on track. He also had a publicized press conference at the NATO event that he hosted in Washington, but none of them really captured the imagination as much as the poor performance that everybody saw in that debate. And so as I mentioned, the numbers still were going low and the fundraising started to dry up. Interestingly, though, Trump's numbers of new approval beyond the base, because I'm in agreement with you, of course, that his base is solid, but the numbers of support for Donald Trump since the assassination attempt, since the convention, have not risen to the level that you might think, considering how Biden's numbers were going down.
Okay. There is also the issue of undecided voters in the United States of America. For an extended period of time, this has been an issue. How much of a problem could it be to both the parties and the both candidates? Now we have the confirmation that it's Donald Trump, but we have to wait until the convention, the Democratic Party's convention, to either confirm Kamala Harris or nominate any other person. We don't know whether they would unanimously vote for her.
I don't think we have to wait that long. I think that you're already hearing from analysts and reporters out there who are tracking the number of delegates that she needs to get her across the line. There is already a very fast and furious campaign by Kamala Harris, because, of course, let's point out to your listeners and your viewers that when Joe Biden stepped down, not long after that statement came out, he also then took to Twitter to endorse Kamala Harris. And since then, every potential contender against her or challenger against her have come out and endorsed her. So Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, and on, Governor Beshears from Kentucky, all of the other potential Democratic top line ticket takers that could have challenged her in an open convention, which is what you're alluding to, have endorsed her. So even though she doesn't have, I think the number is 1986, that she needs the number of pledged delegates from Biden that she needs to have, there are about just under 4,000 delegates that come into the convention. And those people are the ones that are transferring their votes that actually bring forward the nominee. It's not that Biden can officially transfer them. He can't, because those pledges are pledges. They're not binding. But she and her campaign are clearly working the phones already immediately and have more than 500 endorsements from states that have apparently told her on the record, you have our vote. Florida, North Carolina, Kentucky, you have our votes already. So she's going to be expected that she'll be the person that's running. And you're already seeing in the last 24 hours, the Trump campaign has brought out advertisements and are campaigning actively against her as if she were the official nominee. So no, it's not official, but it's pretty much thought that it is, although nothing in this world now, as we know, is a guarantee. But it does look like she will be the candidate. And it's important for the Democrats to come together because time is of the essence. They're just 100 days out until the November 5th election. They really need to have unity, cohesion, and a consistency and consensus about who that candidate is. So people are looking to, how's the campaign for her? How is she going to separate her legacy and her administration from from Joe Biden's administration? Because the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, is already trying to link her very much with the problem at the border. She was supposed to be the border czar. Why have there been 10 million immigrants that have come through? Why is there concern that she hasn't been able to do the things that apparently she was tasked with doing? So they're doing their best to see what they can do to have it not be as strong of a campaign from her. But make no mistake, just until 24 hours ago, their campaign was geared up to take on Joe Biden. And so everything has changed with his stepping down.
All right, Gina London, one important thing that we need to know, we and our viewers here in Nigeria, is that who is Kamala Harris? What can you say about her?
Okay, good point. She is a former prosecuting attorney from the state of California. She is a former attorney general, also from California, and she served in the Senate as a senator from that state as well. I believe she is in her 50s. I don't have her exact date of birth. I want to say she's about 52. It could be a little bit older, but she is certainly a lot younger than Joe Biden, and she's also a lot younger than Donald Trump.
Yes.
So it's important to point out, I think, too, that she, of course, was vice president, is still currently vice president under Joe Biden, and that now Donald Trump becomes the oldest presidential candidate to ever run in the United States at 78. So he had used that as a wedge and a leverage against Joe Biden. And now there may be, if she is considered the presumptive nominee and does become the actual presidential candidate after the convention, which starts on August 19th in Chicago, then if he does agree to debate, which is also something to look to see, there was a second debate that was scheduled and agreed to between Donald Trump and Joe Biden for the second week of September. Let's see if Donald Trump continues to agree to that. He might say, hey, I agreed to it with Biden, not with Harris. So let's see. But if there is a debate between those two presidential candidates, I'm certain that she'll be making a situation or a element about the age, because that was something that he was certainly doing.
Yes. Of course, I've just looked it up. She is 59 years of age. That's okay. Kamala Harris, of course. And given this, the date of birth reads 20th of October, and she was born in 1964. That makes her 59 years now. But in October, she will turn 60, still a lot younger than Donald Trump. Still talking about comparing her with Joe Biden, how much of a difference is she going to make? Let me rephrase the question. How different is she going to be from Joe Biden? How effectively different, if I can put it this way?
Well, her communication style is different, of course. And let's also point out that she's a woman. She's a woman of color. And it would be a lot different. You know, Donald Trump is known for his insults. And it's going to be a little more tricky for him to be as disparaging as he might be, because there could be elements of, wait a minute, you're crossing a line with her because of who she is. The nickname that he's had so far for her, which doesn't seem to be that damaging, is that she's laughing Kamala. Hey, did you hear her laugh? She sounds nuts. She sounds crazy. These are quotes from him, not me. And there is unlikely to be a campaign that sticks about her ability to communicate, because as a former prosecuting attorney, she does have the ability to debate, and she's quicker on her feet if it comes to an ad lib or extemporaneous situation in a debate than Joe Biden ever was, not even withstanding the deterioration that we've seen from the 2020 version of Joe Biden that defeated Donald Trump to the 2024 version of Joe Biden. So I think she will be a good campaigner. She certainly has vitality and energy. Remember, it's not always about age. It's also about the vitality and your ability to sustain the rigors of a presidential national campaign, which is exhausting for anyone. I think we'll see if they actually get a debate. I think that's going to be interesting. She has her first public appearance today, the Monday that we're recording this. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm imagining that this will be the first debut of her positioning herself as that national candidate, although it's yet to be officially acknowledged and recognized.
Yes, which is very important. As a communications consultant, as somebody who is specialized in the field of communication, do you think she will have more advantages than Donald Trump when it comes to communicating what the American people want to hear from their candidates?
Well, it's interesting because some American people are satisfied with short, pithy answers. For instance, everybody can quote, "Make America Great Again." What does that actually mean when you ask someone who supports Donald Trump? What does that look like? When was America great again? Or great before? You'll get a variety of answers. People can also quote the wall. They can also build the wall. They can't always say how much more wall was made. Did Mexico pay for it? There's a disconnect sometimes between pithy campaign slogans and actual policy that you can point to that people can repeat. So I think it's actually going to be very important. And the Democrats have missed this a lot. They missed it with Hillary. They had deep policy platforms and they didn't have memorable, short, brief messages on top of them to galvanize and get the people inspired. So there is an opportunity for Kamala Harris, if she does become the actual candidate, and even as she's building up to this, to start to get some of those high-level, brief, emotionally backed, memorable messaging that can hopefully really galvanize her own base, and most importantly of all, bring those swing states along to her, because of course the U.S. presidential election is ultimately decided by the Electoral College, not every single vote that matters. Those votes that come together from a state,
the popular votes.
Most of them are winner take all, and you get to the magic number of 538, and how many you need from that to actually win is that majority plus one.
Yeah. Before I ask you a question about the Electoral College and the meaning of swing states, because we've been hearing it, seeing it on the news and its significance. Quick answer to this. Would you be happy if Kamala Harris would adopt or could adopt the populist style of Donald Trump, which has proven to be effective?
If there were a populist stand, but it was also backed up with rule of law, getting back to the policies of care, reproductive rights for women, if you were being able to package those in a way that was resonating in a populist manner, I don't have a problem with a good popular individual with some charisma. What I have a problem with, if it's all style and no substance, if you can partner those two together, then you've got a real winning combination.
All right, swing states. What does that mean? What do they mean, those states?
Those are the states that went over from that they're not all counted as a ruby red. For example, my home state and where I registered to vote is in Indiana, it consistently votes Republican. So we would call that red for Republicans, blue for the Democrats. So the states where there's a narrow margin where it might have flipped in 2016 from 2020, you're looking at states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona to a degree. These states, and there are also states with a good chunk of electoral colleges. If you have a swing state, for example, in Wyoming that only has 2 electoral college votes, I believe, it's not going to make a big difference. But if you've got a pretty dense populated state like Michigan or Pennsylvania, where you've got double-digit numbers for your electoral college, you want to win those because it can tip the scale in your favor.
Electoral college, is it a system or a group of people that decide who becomes the US president? Because here in Nigeria, we are confused when we hear the term electoral college. Hillary Clinton.
Many Americans are confused too, Umar, so you're not alone. This was a situation back. It's true. This was a plan that was devised by the founding fathers. Let's face it, when there were still slaves, when there were no women that could vote, when the only people that could vote were white men who owned land. And so they wanted to essentially take away the individual right of someone to vote for that high level of an office. And instead, they had the party of each state select. Essentially, it's like these delegates. It's the same idea. You've got delegates to put forward the nominee. You've got delegates who are then the electoral college voters. And they're the ones that now what they do is they look at the way the popular vote goes in that state. But let's say your popular vote in Michigan is, I'm just going to use round numbers, is 1,000 votes for Trump and 1,001 votes for Harris in this case. We don't get a split of 50-50 electoral college votes from Michigan to each candidate. It's a winner take all that goes all of those votes. Let's say it's, I don't remember what it is. Let's say it's 25. So you get 25 electoral college votes. You get all of the basket instead of a true reflection of how the voters went in that particular state. So it starts to become state by state by state. We're focusing on Florida because they've got a big number. We're focusing on California because they've got a huge number. But California pretty much always goes blue, Democrats, when they vote. So typically all that number goes right there. When you look at then the sweeping of the country, that is how you get to that magic number of the electoral college, 538. And whoever gets the plurality or the majority plus one in the electoral college, they win. They call it the election's over. So that's why in 2016, Donald Trump became the president because the electoral college numbers, he had the most, but he lost by millions in the popular vote. But it didn't matter